Why do CEOs or leaders fear cultural transformations? They're hard work. They require a level of intentionality and consistency and discipline. They require 20, 30, 40x the communication they're doing today, consistently, all the time.
Do you feel like culture is not necessarily top of mind of many leaders? They are neglecting all the cultural transformation that is needed in organization to drive change and performance?
I think all of the CEOs I worked with think about culture. Where I see the gap.
When the 2008 financial crisis hit, Rebecca Macieira-Kaufmann didn't flinch. She led one of the boldest corporate turnarounds in the US banking. So in this episode, the former Citibank CEO and Fortune 50 executive shares what it really takes to drive reinvention, from high-stakes boardrooms to fast-moving startups. So if you're leading through uncertainty, her lessons on clarity, courage, and strategic change will definitely shape how you lead starting today.
I think some people think they don't have the time to work on the culture. For me, it is a necessity. It is not a luxury. It is the core of everything, because when you get up in the morning and you go to work, the minute you're not being managed directly about something to do, you're relying on the culture to drive what you do. We had 5,000 people on the team, but I brought in about 25 people to say, what about the culture of Citigroup do we think works? Then I said, what has not been working? The group would say, this is what we want to keep and this is what we want to get rid of. It was a lot about culture. So I think my advice or takeaway from everyone is...
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of the World Class Leader Show. I'm very excited today to have with me somebody that is a well-known business and senior leader that lives in California, and her name is Rebecca Macieira-Kaufmann. Rebecca is a boardroom strategist, crisis-tested CEO, and former Fortune 50 global executive who transforms leadership by putting clarity, reinvention, and total health at the heart of performance. She's also the co-author of FitCEO. We'll have a chance to talk about it. And the subtitle of the book is Be the Leader of Your Life, the best-selling guide to holistic executive well-being. Rebecca has been also known for leading Citibank California through the 2008 financial crisis, orchestrating one of the most high-profile corporate turnarounds in banking. That success launched a decade-long career at Citigroup, where she held multiple top leadership roles, including president of California, Nevada, and president and CEO of a chairman of the board for Banamex USA. And she previously spent 13 years at Wells Fargo, building a multi-billion-dollar division, serving over 2 million customers. Today, also, Rebecca serves on board of NASDAQ listed and many private companies, and advise startup founders, enterprise leaders through her firm, RMK Group. So, Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrea. Wonderful to be here.
Amazing. So the reason why I decided to invite Rebecca on the show is a twofold, really. One is for the amazing experience she has, and we will walk through the episode today. And the second reason is she has written a book talking about CEOs. And for the audience of this show, as you are aware, we always talk about CEOs, their life, their challenges, their aspirations, how they're making impact in the world. So clearly, there is a strong fit with your work, Rebecca, and the people that are listening or watching to this episode today. And the topic of this conversation, when we were discussing together, we might take, as always, many different directions. But I'm interested to understand from you, what does it mean for leaders embrace strategic reinvention to navigate change and drive long-term growth, which I think is top of mind for many, many leaders. But let me start with the question, Rebecca, is if we start from your experience, your career, you led a major, not only corporate companies, but you led a major corporate turnaround during 2008 crisis. So I'm really curious to understand, what did that experience teach you about the real drivers of strategic reinvention and what still applies today?
Thank you. All crises are an amazing burning platform to
They are.
step back and look at where do you want to go with intentionality, because you'll get the buy-in at a level that you would never get when everything's going great. If everything's going great, people tend to want to keep going that way. I not say it's going to be resistance to change, but there'd be a higher bar of why should we change if everything's going well? But when you're in a crisis like we had in 2008, and I had the fortune of being invited in to come in November 2008 and take on the presidency of Citi California and Nevada, I was walking into an environment where everyone knew things had to change. So I would say that platform was phenomenal to really step back and say, to your question of what did I learn or what did I experience that was really drivers of that. So for me, what I first did was bring the group together of the key leaders, probably around a group of 25 people. We had 5,000 people on the team, but I brought in about 25 people to say,
Right.
what about the culture of Citigroup, California, Nevada, or our whole team do we think works? And we spent a lot of time, what's working? Then I said, what has not been working? And had to spend a lot of time on that to bring back that the group would say, this is what we want to keep and this is what we want to get rid of. That enabled us, I think, to be aligned across managing the 5,000 people around where we were going to go and what were we going to do that we all agreed and what were we not going to do culturally. It was a
Right.
lot about culture. So I think my advice or takeaway from everyone is I think some people think they don't have the time to work on the culture. It's like somehow that's a luxury. And for me, it is a necessity. It is not a luxury. It is the core of everything because when you get up in the morning and you go to work, the minute you're not being managed directly about something to do, you're relying on the culture to drive what you do. So that was extraordinarily helpful for us about becoming a client centric culture. And therefore, when you're going in, I mean, we had 400 stores. So when you're going to work every day, what are you doing? You're there to make sure you're serving the clients. There are other pillars of the culture, but that one was number one because clients were scared in '08. Very scared. Employees were scared. There was a lot of fear in the environment. So we had to communicate it 20, 30, 40 times what you think would be the norm because every day the news is hitting them saying banks are going to fail, money's going to disappear. So you could have customers coming in, my money safe. People would stop me in the elevator and say, you know, I'm the sole breadwinner for the family. Will I have a job tomorrow? It's very scary to see the stock price of the institution they work for go down almost to a dollar or to a dollar, $1.10. I mean, so we spent a lot of time on here's what we're going to do, here's what we're not going to do. Customer is the most important thing. So take care of the customer. And that is very motivational for an employee because they know what to do every day. I'm not going to get all the detail of it, but I'd say overcoming the fear by spending your time on helping the customer.
By the way, I can agree fully in terms of crises are always a fantastic burning platform if used properly, you know, with the focus on performance and, resetting what is not working. So I think you made a great example of a way of doing properly. And also you mentioned about culture. But do you feel like culture is never a top of mind of I wouldn't say never, maybe never is too much, but it's not necessarily top of mind of many leaders until something happens. Until something happens, and then they realize, well, there is something that is not work. Is I would try to change the process, try to change the model, we try to change the strategy, whatever, but then something is still not working as expected. So then, as a kind of a last resort, say, oh, maybe it's about culture. But do you feel like people or some leaders they are neglecting all the cultural transformation that is needed in organization to drive change and performance?
I think all of the CEOs I worked with think about culture. Where I see the gap is what are the execution routines that you do every day in your work that link to culture. So I think they
Right.
all spend time on mission statements and value statements. And I think they do offsites and think through all of those things with their leadership team. And then I think they publish it. The place I see the miss is that is, you know, step one out of 2000. And I think a lot of people stop there. The rest of it is, well, what does that mean? How does that run through our work? How does that impact my compensation? How does that impact what I do with a customer? How does that impact how I address a crisis? So, what I spent a lot of time with CEOs on is what are the entire business processes that reinforce that culture?
Yes.
So that's where I see the miss. It's not that they don't think about culture or think that it's important. It's that they haven't driven it through the execution routines and the business processes in an organization to the nth degree. I'll give you an example. When I did a turnaround of the Mexican American bank, one of the things I did was say, look, we had 1,000 things we had to do, bunch them into projects of 10, and every 10 we had a party when it was completed. And then we had awards, and the awards all matched with our 4-pillar culture. And so you could get a team award, you could get a customer centricity award, you get an excellent execution award, you get a profitability award. Well, those are our 4 pillars of culture. Do the right thing for the customer, do the right thing for the employee, do it with excellence operationally, and it has to deliver shareholder value. So then all the compensation, the awards, the recognition, all aligned with the culture. So
Right.
you knew how to make a decision. Is it right for the customer? Is it right for the employee? Can I deliver it with excellence? And there's a lot in that operational culture around compliance and legal and ethics. And then does it deliver value for the shareholder or the company or the stakeholders? Now everyone in the business knows how to make a decision if the CEO is not in the room. Are those 4 things happening?
Yeah, it makes totally sense. And I have a question. So in my experience, leaders they appreciate it, they understand the value of and importance of culture as a catalyst for performance. And I think you made a great example how you really focus your attention on culture for the turnaround that you've been involved in. But what do you think is scaring CEOs to make a real change about culture? Is more about what inside of what you just said in terms of they don't know how to make it happen. So they are aware what is needed as a transformation, as a change, but then they are concerned about execution or they are concerned about something else, like, well, maybe it's gonna take too long, maybe it's not going to work, maybe we're gonna spend a lot of time, money, effort on something that will not produce the result that we want.
All of the above is my answer to that. So, why do CEOs or leaders fear cultural transformations? They're hard. They're
They
really
are.
hard. They're hard work. They require a level of intentionality and consistency and discipline. They require 20, 30, 40x the communication they're doing today consistently all the time. And it takes time. You can't turn well, it depends how big the company is. With 30 people, you can shift a culture pretty
Of
fast.
course.
I've always worked in my teams have been much larger than that. So when you have thousands of people, it requires buy-in, and there's always a skepticism of, "Oh, this is flavor of the day. Okay, we got a new leader. What's her flavor of the day?" Right? And so every time someone makes a statement, they're like, "We're now about team." Yeah, 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 whatever, right? So you have to get your leaders to buy in, and then you have to get all your routines to support it. And when people don't match the culture, let's say they aren't client centric, let's say they don't do things with excellence, let's say they make decisions that aren't good for the employee or the shareholder, then you need to make those hard decisions and either give them the chance to improve, give them the hard feedback, give them X amount of time to improve. And if they don't, you need to move them out of the organization. So all that hard work demonstrates a culture. And so let's say there's someone on the team who's dragging your culture. They're impacting 8, 10, 12 people around them. And
Yes.
until they see you really live up to the culture and both recognize and reward the people who are doing the culture the way you want it, and that you actually move out the people that don't, then you'll start getting believership. So it's hard work. I would say the fear, if you will, isn't inaccurate. It's just the time, the energy. I would say it's the best investment you could ever make because it lasts a long time. It enables people to grow and make decisions without you in the room driving everything. And but it takes a commitment.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm with you. And that is a good segue for the next question I have for you in terms of leaders themselves. So let's go more inside of their life of CEOs, life of senior leaders that have an important responsibility, to drive the transformation. I think it's a common experience that most of us have. I mean, working with clients is many leaders talk about transformation. They want to transform X, Y, Z. But then, for a reason or another, it's not just about culture. It's generally speaking transforming the company. But sometimes they struggle to make it happen. They get concerned. They get, as you said, fear is very critical for their reputation too. It's not only about, right, the success of the company. Is as a CEO, the only thing that you really have is your reputation. So your reputation is at stake. What do you think is stopping people for be more, let's say, bolder, more disruptive in transforming their companies? So they ended up accepting the status quo, maybe working on incremental improvement and strategy versus really transforming the company as most of the time is needed.
So I would say one thing that is a good starting point is what got you here to becoming CEO will not get you there. That is a very hard, one can say it, we all have heard the expression, but it's a very hard concept to realize that what might have gotten me through all my levels of promotions were individual contributions, speaking up, working really
Yes.
hard, burning the midnight oil, etc. But once you're at these different levels of management, what starts to make you more successful is the ability to manage others, the ability to inspire others, the ability to develop others, hire talent. By the time you hit the CEO role, what got you there was a significant combination of multiple skills, correct?
Yes.
Now, if you will, the reinvention of self is so hard is you think you've arrived. So there's a lot more ego. It's not just fear. There's a lot of ego of all these people say you're amazing. You're the CEO. You get picked up by black cars and you fly business class. Whatever the perks are of that role, all of a sudden you could, drink your own Kool-Aid. So there are so many antidotes to that. For me, it was like doing a lot more roundtables with employees at all levels, customer service, answering the phone, back office, fulfillment, not only spending my time with a C-suite of, super high IQ, super motivated, but my business didn't run with only the top 10 people. My business ran with tellers and the most amazing people were at the front line interacting with the customers. So spending for me in that example would be spending your time in the field, staying very open and humble to say, well, what is happening at the front lines of my business? What is the experience for a client? What is working? So we spent a lot of time. I create a routine of every month we read all the complaints. You can imagine how many complaints you get as a bank.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so
I'm
actually
sure.
getting into the experience of what is creating pain for our customers and can we fix it? So we fixed a lot of things that make you realize there's a lot that needs to be reinvented. Now we didn't only read the complaints, we read all the accolades too and our NPS scores. I say you have to create habits and routines that keep you one foot very strongly in the current reality of your business to know what needs to be reinvented. And then you need to keep one foot very strongly in the possible of the future and the optimism to inspire people to follow you to get there. But without that one foot in the current reality of, gee, we have a really bad XYZ process and it is really annoying our customers. And if we don't fix it, they're going to leave. And it's very hard to leave a bank, right? It's a hassle. So you have very sticky customers. So when someone's leaving, that they're pretty upset and they'll tell 10, 20, 30 other people. So these are the things you can work on to say, I have to reinvent my business. Now, when you come to self, that requires, asking for feedback. So it's not the front line, but you could do 360s, you could ask for feedback. You have to start making yourself a little vulnerable to say what's working and what's not working. And working with a coach is amazing for that because the coach or the person you hire can interview your direct reports and find out what do they love, what doesn't work. I'd say for a lot of the CEOs I work with, it's that they had not yet given enough autonomy to their direct reports, so they don't feel yet trusted at the level they want to be. They could soar a lot faster if their leader gave them more autonomy, which is always so interesting. So I think there's a lot of work you can do to say, what are the areas I need to reinvent as a leader? And then the working with a coach, as you talked about, could be helping letting go of the ego, which is driving that fear. So, got a long answer to your question. And in the book, and FitCEO, I talk a lot about just ways to think about really small steps and small adjustments that can make a huge impact. You don't have to change everything about yourself. What you are and who you are got you where you are. But these small adjustments, like, hey, Andrea, run with it. let me know in a week. Let's check in. Like, start saying things like that. You run with it. I trust you. Let's meet next week on where you are.
Interesting. And we can probably spend the entire episode talking about the ego and well, what's the implication of ego to leaders and their companies, their performance. So one reflection I have based on what you said, I think you're right. Ego clearly drives fear. And what I notice in my experience is finding the balance between, I mean, ego is necessary as everything else in life. It's just the problem is finding the right balance between ego and relationships. So finding a way where you can create or maintain your power and your influence without taking yourself so important, so it's all about you. So it's finding a balance, as I think it's a finding a balance in leadership is always a art. It requires mastery, and I think that the challenge with many leaders out there is they are not yet master in dealing with themselves, dealing with other people. So I think it's consistent with what you shared. I'm so interesting about this idea about reinvention. I tell you why. My next book, it's about the identity gap that exists at the top. Meaning, I have worked with so many leaders. They got to the point. By the way, is exactly to your point in terms of what got you here is not necessarily what you needed from there. And I got so many people I work with. They had an amazing experience. They had an amazing career. They got to the level of a CEO. Maybe they run one or two twice in a good positive experience, but then they find themselves in a position where, what's really why I'm here? Really, what is my why here? What is the legacy I want to create for myself? And by the way, for some leaders, that becomes like an obsession. Not having clarity in terms of what they really want to be remembered for, what they want to leave, after they leave the organization, they leave the role. And that creates an identity issue. And how to deal with this identity sometimes it requires reinvention. So some other times is more a matter of finding clarity and going back to your North Star as an individual. But for some other people, the gap is so strong or so deep that actually requires a full reinvention. And for some people, reinvention means leaving the organization. For other people, means leaving their corporate world and doing something else. I did it, maybe you did too, and that was a part of our reinvention. So that's, I think, is quite normal. Is there kind of a reinvention that that you are talking about when it comes to personal level?
Oh, absolutely. I think each reinvention, if you will, is a decision about what are my intentions? Where am I going? So if you're in a constant crisis mode, which many startup CEOs are because they have to be because everything is churning, um, you might get burnt out from the hours or from the just exhaustion of the decision making, but they aren't typically burnt out from, they aren't yet at the place that you're talking about, which I find more with my Fortune 50 clients or 100 clients, whatever, large, where they're, what is my legacy? Where do I want to go? Because they have large
Yes.
teams and they've turned it around. They've done all this stuff that they now have a well oiled machine working. With them, I spend more time on what's my legacy? Do I want to be a servant leader? How do I move from this history of my life as a leader of doing and driving and doing and driving to influencing, inspiring, motivating, and developing? It's ironic. They're just such huge shifts to become that kind of a leader, and yet that's what they have to do. There is this, this is a typical curve of becoming a
Yes.
leader of leader of leaders of leaders, and you're now managing people who manage people who manage people who manage people. That's really different. It's a communication job. It's a focus job. Very different than my startup CEOs. That they're not there yet. They could be. I hope they are because I get shares. But that's not where they are right now. So, and I have both kinds of clients. So I'd say the journey of reinvention, if you will, and then again, we talk about in the book around how do you make yourself a fit leader, both emotionally, spiritually, physically, is spending that time, not overwhelmingly, but like, what do I want to leave? Who do I want to become? Because we're all in a state of becoming. And so I see this movement to giving back, developing, leaving a legacy of leaders. Obviously leaving a legacy of improved share price, otherwise you don't have your job, and a wonderful, amazing client experience, otherwise you don't have a business. But this personal journey that we're talking about, I think it's so profound when I see a CEO take it on and really embrace it, because the minute they start practicing with it, it's so freeing. It's just so freeing. All the little stuff they were worried about, but they realize you already made all that. They already made their financial success. They've already proven that they can be leader. Now, how do you help others become you? It's a very powerful shift. Those who make it.
Yeah, and talking about your book, you keep saying using the word health, wellness, sustainability. So it's essentially living, which I think is so timely as a topic. So living, your job as a CEO in a more, what is the right word? I wouldn't say, maybe it's just this, just not just living the CEO role as a bad experience, as something that is stressing, is create tension for yourself, for your health, for your family. How leaders and CEOs, in your perspective, can really live, their life as a CEO in a way that's really sustainable? Because one thing is important to say. I mean, only last year in America, thousands of CEOs, they left their job, they resigned because they couldn't deal with the pressure and with the stress of the work. And that's, to me, is increasing. Is increasing the pressure, is increasing the stress level, and is increasing, unfortunately, what are the consequences of them personally. So, in your experience, given that you have been through this, and that is a part of also your book, how can you be a fit CEO in 2025?
Well, first of all, this is the ageless question that will agelessly go on, right? Every year will become more. Everything every year becomes faster and more.
Yeah,
So 1/5 of the book, if I tell you the sections of the book, the first section of the book is commitment. Like, what are you going to commit to as a human being, as a leader? The second 1/5 of the book is about boundaries. So, to be a really effective, healthy, mentally, physically fit CEO, you have to know your boundaries and when they're permeable and when they're not permeable. So there are CEOs I've seen that just have no boundaries. Well, that is not sustainable. And there are CEOs that maybe have too many boundaries and they end up getting fired because they don't get the stuff done that they need to get done. So
right.
it's about an intentionality I'm going to have boundaries. So my goal is, my intention is, my commitment is to have, let's say, dinner with my family 5 nights a week. And 2 nights a week, I'll pulse late and take care of crazy stuff that happens late at night. Well, wow, that might look really different than their life before, where it was chaos and they were just constantly staying late because it was always a crisis. We're saying my commitment is I'm going to have dinner with my family 5 nights a week, Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. So I'm saying that, Monday and Wednesdays, I'm going to allow a pulse night. Maybe I'll make it home for dinner, but maybe I'll tell my family, look, those are 2 nights I'm not making it home for dinner because I'm going to be available for pulsing later to do stuff that inevitably shows up. An example, thinking through time blocking. A lot of the CEOs I work with, it's like, block the time to think, block the time to do strategy, because what happens is they end up in meetings 24/7. And so then their job feels like it's never getting done because they're in meetings. But actually, that is their job. So, what is your job? Defining your job. If you want and say that your job is to lead the strategy of the firm, then you have to block the time for it. If your job is to develop leaders, then you need to block the time for one on ones with your direct reports and all team meetings and all hands meetings and all communication. And boy, and if your job is to manage Wall Street or shareholders or the venture community, whoever your investors are, block the time. So time blocking, to say, what's my job and how do I spend my time? It sounds so basic, but that's where I see the issues. Is the stress comes from not really doing the things they think they should be doing, but they get sucked into because they're a brilliant engineer and that's how they started off. Product, they're in product all the time. Well, get yourself out of product. Make sure you hire the right product leader in engineering, right? So these are the things I do. And the book we talk a lot about a self-management guide. It's almost the book is a self-management guide, you know,
Right.
and all the tips and tricks are in the book around things like self-care. You Self-care is not selfish. If what gives you self-care is listening to music, then you need to listen to music X amount of time a day and block it, because then that's what will be your meditation. If your self-care is running, then you need to block X amount of time a day on the calendar and have a boundary on it that it's sacred that you run every day if that's how you de-stress. If your self-care is crawling on the floor with your dog or your baby or your partner, block it. So it's about ensuring the intentionality. So the third section of the book is intention. The fourth section of the book is self-care. And the fifth one is about the heart, having fun and enjoying the whole thing, which will inspire others.
Yeah, and I'm glad that there is that session in the book, because I'm a big promoter of having fun in the workplace and having the opportunity to smile, to spend meaningful and valuable time with your people. Because otherwise, it's gonna be daunting and sometimes boring. So I think it's such a great point. And also, I like that your book start with commitment because I'm again strong believer of people. They need to commit, and then they need to be work with integrity and deliver what they committed to. And I can say, broadly speaking, and that's my assertion working with, you know, for so many years in the business system, is people, they really struggle to commit, and when they commit they don't really do what they said they were going to do. And that's, to me, is why business is failing, or why organizations, they are not performing as they should do. So
The one thing I'd add to your question around, the stress, the increasing stress, the art of leadership, the yin and yang and the tensions. For the CEOs, you said a lot of CEOs have left in the last year. I mean, one of the things I think that is overlooked is asking for help.
yes.
Because what you do, what I do, what a number of us do out there who we have been CEOs or C-suite leaders for 30 plus years, I think it's an amazing choice to say, I'm going to get a coach or an advisor. And that takes a lot of
Or a
courage,
therapist, or a
or a
therapist.
therapist or whatever they need, but getting help, having a support. And like,
Yes.
we talk about in the book that if you're a Formula One car, you need higher performance tires, you need more frequent brakes. You're pulling off after every X laps and getting your tires changed. And you're going back. Like the higher performer you are, the more breaks, little breaks, the more help that team change. I don't know, what is that? 20 people on that car for 2 seconds and changing the tires and they go back on. So, watching a Formula One race, you realize these race car drivers are on a team. These CEOs are high performing and they need a full team supporting them. Therapist, coach, super talent surrounding them, breaks. So the book has tons of metaphors like that.
Yeah, I think that's such a great advice. And when you get, and I'm sure that's your experience too, when you get inside of the world of CEOs, my personal, experience and my observation is the support system is not in place, and they're desperate to have one, given what they're struggling to. And by the way, normally is a coach and advisor, but sometimes it's also having an opportunity to have a kind of just a sounding board. People that are listening, they're not biased, they don't have an opinion.
Advisors with an S. I mean,
Exactly.
I have CEOs that have advisors, they have a therapist, they may have a coach, and they also make it available to their talent to grow their
Yes.
executives. And so the investment they make in development is extraordinary because they see the value, like that place to call that's safe and not their boss.
Yeah, it's correct. And I often bring this story on the podcast when we talk about health and wellness and stress, etc. One CEO came on the show and very authentically shared how his life has been ruined, personally and health perspective, but also from a family perspective. It's been ruined due to the level of work that he was going through as a CEO. It was not sustainable. It was not working. And then, of course, then he retired. Then he started to look back at the past and say, I should have done this and that. So he started to live with the regret. I think it's a great message to people is intervene as soon as possible. Don't let that become your, your unintentional drift, meaning just going where you're supposed to go. You're not stopping and intervening because you don't see, or you're not bold enough to intervene in what is not working for your life. So I think
Well,
it's a
self
great
knowledge
message.
is really important.
Self-knowledge is. Rebecca, you mentioned, I mean, last question in terms of the CEOs before we wrap up this conversation. For you, and I think no, I think I'm sure I agree with with the idea of the boundaries. And some of the CEOs that I'm sure you work with, they have less interest to create boundaries because there are people that want to get their hands everywhere. And that's something that CEOs do. And by the way, it's not just CEOs, other corporate leaders, they tend to step in other people's work, either for their personal interest or for their past career or past experience. We have seen this so many times with people, for example, they are commercial leaders, then they become a CEO, and then they still want to work as a chief commercial officer because they're so much connected to the clients and they think they know how the work should be done. What is required mentally for people to create these boundaries that goes beyond blocking a time? Is actually boundaries of their work and the what they are committed to, what they're supposed to work, versus their being everywhere and they become kind of an operational CEO, and that is not what is required. One, maybe that's not what the board is asking for. By the end, it have to be the operational CEO and going on every single file in organization and losing focus on what is really important for the organization.
Right. No, these are all really important points. One of the things my clients and I work on a lot is no matter what you do, no matter what role you have, you're responsible. The buck stops with you, they're the CEO. So it doesn't matter if it's the operations or the HR group or the finance group or the product group. But in the example you gave, they hire a new commercial person, and that's where the CEO's passion or expertise is. And let's say she doesn't know how to let go of that control. It's coming back saying you're not letting go of control. You're responsible. But now you have to let that person lead the team, lead the way. So literally, I suggest some physical breaks, like meet with them, but don't meet with their team for, 90 days. Like let them be the leader, meet with them for their one on ones, but don't like be really careful in the first 90 days not to skip level. See, I love skip levels. So it's the opposite of what I would do all the time. But in the first 90 days, let this new leader establish themselves as the leader of this group. Don't, and you meet with them maybe once a week, every other week, whatever the cadence makes sense, one on one, so the two of you stay aligned. Because one, you have to have them aligned with the culture and your team and where they need to go, and then let them run with it, but have enough check ins that you are staying aligned and on track. That's how you won't micromanage. But what I've seen the mistake is that if the CEO, let's say a startup CEO hires someone in commercial and they keep going to the meetings with the whole team, everyone's going to just look to the CEO for the answer. They're not ever going to look to me if I'm the person that was hired. So you have to physically not be in that video screen or that room. There is a lot of symbolic breaks that become real that I talk about with folks when they're finding this is their struggle. And I find either I get these two extremes. I get these ones that are so hands off. The CEO just loves handing it off. People like, where is it? So no, we have to come in at a certain pace. And others where they're too in the weeds and we need them to back off. So I think it's all a cadence that I work through with a client. And as you already said, there's so much yin and yang to all this. One of the things I remind the CEO is, look, if it's going well, you keep this cadence of every other week one on one. And now, after time, of course, you go and meet with that team and do skip levels, but wait 3 months until they've been there to establish themselves. If something's in crisis, yes, you get involved. Maybe you meet every day with them if they're in crisis. It depends on the level of the crisis, that you are still responsible for the area. It's delegating without abdicating.
Which is for many leaders not an easy task. So I think it's an important message. Thank you, Rebecca. Final question: what other advice you would like to share, with the audience today in terms of how to deal with stress, uncertainty, pressure, need of transformation, something that we haven't covered, but you feel like is an important attribute or trait for leaders to consider in their development, in their growth?
I think what's really important is that whatever someone is working on, if they're an executive, a CEO, anywhere in their career, start small. You can't make a change with I'm going to have this drastic shift in my life and become, a marathon runner tomorrow.
Right.
Maybe it starts with walking 10 minutes a day. Take a break every day at lunchtime and walk for 10 minutes. And then, after a month of that, it becomes 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So I'm really a strong believer, and the whole book is about small adjustments and make a big impact. So you can start small, do it imperfectly, keep trying it, keep adding to it, and you're building muscle. If that muscle I mentioned is that that the thing that is magical for you in your life is music, then start listening to music 10 minutes a day. Start adding that time, and then it becomes 15. You start creating the space and the habit that it is your routine, that is your disciplined habit over time. That is the profound change that people can make. The mistake I see people do is, I joined a gym. I'm going to go to a 1-hour class. Well, they pull their muscle, they hurt themselves, they're exhausted, and they feel like failures. That's not the way to make a change. You have to start small and build the muscle.
Yeah. And in that way, actually, it will be way, way easier to build even your own confidence during moment of crisis, of challenges. Because if you look at, especially when it comes to transformation, when you look at the price and what is required, again, it will feel like daunting to see the level of transformation change that is required. But starting small, and I would add, building some sort of green shoots, or early wins, whatever we want to call them, to give you the sense of confidence that change is happening, think you are in the right direction, things are going well, and not always looking what is missing, which I think is great for leaders. But also, if we don't start appreciating all the good effort and all the good results that we are achieving, especially when the reinvention transformation requires so long, you will feel like it's a burden. It's going back to the fun and to the excitement. It's not exciting anymore for yourself.
We tried to even live this in the book. So the way the book is structured is every chapter, it's a tiny little book. Every chapter is 2 to 3 pages with immediate imperfect action and some suggestions to get into your body or get, pen to paper. It's 30 chapters. You could read it over 30 days, 10 minutes a day, or you could sit down and read it in 2 hours. But the whole idea of it is exactly this: building these small habits to build the life, the team, the executive presence you want.
Amazing. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm so glad that we spoke about invention, transformation, culture, and what's the implication of leading a serious and significant role that drive performance and impact for our generation. So where people should go if they want to know more about you and your book, Rebecca?
Sure, there are 2 places. The book, FitCEO, Be the Leader of Your Life, you can get on Amazon, Audible, any bookstore you can order it. And then I have a website, RMK Group, LLC.com, where I post links to the book, links to articles, links to all these podcasts. And so, and learn more about what I do.
Amazing. I'm sure people will reach out if they would like to engage with you. So, Rebecca, thank you so much again. It's been an incredible conversation.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I've really enjoyed it.